So we have Rollo, Chris, Ollie, Barney, Kit, Medvig. Yeah, that's the crew. Hi and welcome to my booktube channel. My name is Sam and today I'm doing another Trilogy Talk, which is a series that you don't have to watch in order, where I read all the unread trilogies on these shelves behind me because I found out that I have a lot and I'm trying my best to get through them. So this is, I believe, the third or fourth episode. I should have checked. But today we'll be reading Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shards of Earth trilogy. So we have book 1, Shards of Earth, book 2, Eyes of the Void, and book 3, Lords of Uncreation. Now this is a sci-fi series. They're very chunky books and the basic premise is Earth has been destroyed by a moon-sized entity and no one knows why, but for some reason it has reshaped Earth into a flower-like position, obviously killing hundreds of billions of people in the process, and humanity has had to flee into space and find all these different species. It's very Becky Chambers-esque, where you've got lots of different societies and cultures that kind of clash or come together. It's very intricate, and basically we follow the kind of uncovering of what the architects are up to, and why they are doing what they're doing. We have like a found family element with the crew of the Vulture God, which is the main ship, and it's very much a ragtag group of characters. They initially start off as scavengers, but then some people join the group and some people leave the group, and we kind of form our family in that first book. And I can't praise the first book highly enough. So if you have not read Shards of Earth before watching this video, go watch it, watch my thoughts, then go read the other two and come back, or binge the whole series and come back when you've read them, because don't go into spoilers in this series because it is all about the mystery, and if you know the mystery going in, there's not much point of reading them other than for the fan family, which is brilliant. Ollie and Idris, favourite characters, I will say, going into this. But yeah, we will dive straight into this trilogy. With each book I'll explain what happens, whether briefly or I might ramble a little bit. I am known for my rambling, but I'll either ramble about the plot or I'll have a lot of thoughts. So yeah, let's dive straight into this trilogy. Please leave any support you can. I appreciate a like, a comment and a subscribe. You can always tag the notification bell to be updated when I upload. And now that's all the general YouTube stuff out of the way. I can't wait to discuss this series with you down in the comments, and also for you to hear all my thoughts here. So yeah, let's dive straight into the first book, Shards of Earth. I will mention that I did meet Adrian Tchaikovsky halfway between filming this video, because I've been filming this since like March and it's now September, October time. And in that time I met Adrian Tchaikovsky and he was absolutely lovely. So I think I'll talk about that when it gets to the second book, but if I don't, I'll just recap it in the conclusion. But he's a lovely, lovely gentleman, and definitely go read his books. But yeah, let's get into Shards of Earth now. I can't wait to talk about this book, so let's go. Okay, so I've now read the first book, Shards of Earth, and I can already say in this little non-spoilery section, before we dive into the plot analysis and my thoughts along the way, we'll start off with the non-spoiler section while we can, because we're going to be diving into the rest of the trilogy, obviously. But some quick non-spoilery thoughts for this first book. I'm going to straight away say I'm giving it 5 stars, because I finished this like an hour ago. I binged it within a couple of days. It's a chunky book and I absolutely adored it. Like, it was so enthralling, the characters were so enjoyable. I think they're on kind of the levels of Becky Chambers and her kind of misfit crew on The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I think it's really reminiscent of that. It has the stakes of J.S. Dews's last plot, and also kind of the hard world building of Xinxin Liu's Three Body Problem. Like, those three kind of sci-fi books are the ones that I kind of draw my comparisons between when talking about this book, because I feel like this is a perfect blend between those three authors, J.S. Dews, Xinxin Liu and Becky Chambers. I think if you love any of those authors, check out Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shards of Earth series. But yeah, this one is just so enthralling. It has really hard world building, and now it can be really hard to kind of get into it. You kind of feel like in over your head when you first read the first couple of chapters, because the book starts on this giant epic scale of a giant battle against the architects, which are the main kind of antagonists of this book, and they're kind of like these moon-sized entities that kind of reshape planets and kill millions. So we're fighting one of those straight away, and we have all these different kind of species that are all kind of made up with different like biologies. They all have different looks and different names and different languages, and it can feel very overwhelming, because Adrian does not does not slow down to kind of explain the different nuances between these things. He is straight into the action. He's like, here's what's happening, this is happening now, this is the stakes, we need to like stop this is all over the place, and it's just so intimidating, but if you break past that part, because we do have the time jump after that, if you get past the time jump and then it kind of slows down a bit and starts to explain things, and it's just so vivid and so alive, and I loved all the kind of imaginative species that he came up with. Like, we have people that are kind of like, oh, what happens if we put two people in one body? Do they both have their own sentience, or do they become one person? Is that new entity a new person, or is it a mixture of the two people? Like, there's so many kind of interesting details like that. Even if we don't follow characters of that species, we still get the information, and it's so interesting. And it's really like Becky Chambers' world, where she's like, whereas Becky Chambers is more less on plot and more on characters and world building, I think Adrian does that and has the plot as well. But yeah, not really thoughts. I'm being very rambly here, and I'm trying not to be rambly in this video. I think that, yeah, those three authors, perfect blend. This is action-packed. It has political intrigue. It has straight up just action. There's space battles. There's space pirates. There's like godlike beings. There's like these huge overarching threats. There's mystery. There's intrigue. We constantly have mystery on mystery, but we also have answers. So it's not constantly like, well, what's going on? Oh, we've got another question now. Oh, there's another thing going on now. No, we do get answers as we go along, but those answers just lead to kind of like bigger mysteries. And it's so interesting. I can't wait to get into the future books of this one. So yeah, I don't know what else is to say before I spill into the pot. But yeah, I definitely recommend this book. It is so good. And yeah, if you're looking for that kind of like huge threat feel with kind of a found family, but kind of begrudgingly found family of like these different species and aliens and stuff like that, like just check out this one. It is very intimidating to begin with, and especially because of the size of it is very chunky. But please give this a go. Do not overlook it. That is going to be all my kind of non-spoilery thoughts. There wasn't a lot there, but I feel like I just need you to read this and come back and we can talk about it in the comments below, because this book is so good. And I can't wait to break down the plot of all these three books in this video and have kind of a time capsule of how amazing this book was that I can come back to all the time and that I can share with you guys. Because yeah, from this point on, I'm going to break down kind of in bullet points what happens and kind of my thoughts along the way for all three of these books. So there's going to be massive spoilers, so click off now if you don't want to hear any more, but please come back after you've read these books because they're so good. But yeah, see you in the spoilery section. Bye if you're not coming. See you there. Okay, so diving into the breakdown of Shards of Earth, I'm going to try and keep this brief because I did just film this and it went on for way too long, so I'm refilming it. But Shards of Earth is the first book in this trilogy, and we start off on a bang. Like, as I said in the non-spoilery section, so much is thrown at you straight away. We are in the midst of this really like weighty battle against an architect. Now, if you're struggling to imagine an architect in this book, basically imagine a moon-sized entity covered in crystals, and it has kind of these invisible hands that kind of rip apart planets, similar to us on this cover, and they rip them apart into these kind of flowers or these kind of different sculptures, and no one knows why, but they only target inhabited planets, and they kill billions in the process. So we start off with an architect heading towards this planet, and everyone is trying to get the hell off of this planet. They're using every ship they can to ferry as many people off as they can. And in the meantime, we have all these other ships kind of in between the planet and the architect trying to fight it off. And it's just no use. The architect is ripping up all these ships. It is unstoppable. It's this huge threat. And it's a threat of the unknown as well. Like, no one knows why it's doing what it's doing. But we pick up following a character called Solace, who is a part of the Partheon, which is an elite group of bioengineered warrior women who are made after the destruction of Earth to kind of be a shield between the architects and whatever planet they were going to. And their whole society is this militaristic kind of society of fighting off the architects. And it's like their main goal. So they wake up Solace from cryogenic sleep, and she is put to battle. And she's given this weird man, this weird man, they jump on her and it's like, he's a weapon, use him. And this is Idris. Now, so Solace takes Idris up to the command deck and it's like, hey, do your weapon thing. And Idris is like, okay. And he is an intermediary, which we learn is kind of an engineered human who can interface psychically with an architect to either battle it mind to mind or kind of communicate with it mind to mind. And he somehow manages to ward off this architect. And later on we learn that I think he killed it. But we're not told that straight away. And then after this battle, the architects just kind of disappear and we have a 40-year time jump. But this battle was so kind of enthralling. I immediately felt the tension, and even though you're kind of grasping at things to understand, because Tchaikovsky does not slow down at any point to kind of explain what's going on. He's like, these people are doing this, these people are doing this is what's happening here, this is what this ship is called, da 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 da. He's just going all out. He's like, brings in the tension by putting us in such an unknown situation. Like, we are frantic, we don't know what's going on, similar to the characters here. Like, this big thing is about to kill us all, we don't know what's going on, and neither does the audience. So he does a brilliant job of setting up the stakes and setting up the tension, but I do fear that it will scare some people off from reading this book. So I really hope that people can at least get past that too, because once you pass the 40-year time jump, he slows down a lot and he starts to explain these different things and these different nuances between the different species, and it's very good world building. It's like Becky Chambers and it's so freaking good. So please give it a chance. I don't know why I say that. You've read this, you're watching the spoiler section, but give it a go. But yeah, we have this whole battle. Idris does something with the architect and the battle's over. The architects go away for 40 years and everyone kind of forgets it. So we jump 40 years into the future and everyone has kind of forgotten about the architects. We have this kind of typical, like, we don't see them anymore, they're not a threat, let's just fight each other. And now we are on the brink of civil war. Everyone among the colonies, which is everything the Earth has colonized once it was destroyed, everyone on those and the aliens that were already out there want to fight the Parthenon, which is the bioengineered women, because they are like a militaristic force that no one really likes, because they're like, hey, you want to like kill all our men, you want to make everyone perfectly bioengineered, you don't like any people that are different, like blah, 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 blah. And the Parthenon's like, no, we just want to be a shield in case the architects come back, but also we're not the good guys because we're a militaristic force that kind of do things our own way, and we're isolated in that. So neither side is very good. But they hate each other and they're on the brink of civil war. So the Parthenon awakens Solace again after out of cryosleep and say, hey, we need an in case we need to do any deep space travel. Now by this we mean going into the unspace, which is this universe's version of hyperspace. Now unspace, this is how I imagined it, but if it's very kind of weirdly described, but if you imagine the universe is everything above the book here. So this is the universe. When we want to travel from point A to point B in the universe, we drop out of reality and we go do like that. Rather than going do, we go do. Because they kind of have to drop out of reality, and that's why it's called unspace. And down here there's this weird kind of overarching entity, this weird feeling which most people attribute to just human paranoia, but it is actually a real creature. We learn later on there's something nefarious down in unspace that kind of is going to come up in later books, I think, is this more eminent threat, because later we learn that when Idris is doing a thing later on in Unspace, this is how he learns the architects are coming back, because he sees them moving down here, but they're not the threat that kind of overarches, they're not like the feeling that overcomes everyone. So there's still kind of, they're separate things, so there's that. But yeah, they need an int to go into unspace because only the ints can handle being in unspace. If you're a normal person or a normal species going into unspace, you'll go crazy, you'll go mad, you'll hurt yourself, you'll hurt others. So everyone has to be put to sleep, and the ints have to do the traveling because they can comprehend it, because they have this special like link between the architects and this kind of broadened mind. So the Parthenon wants an int, and Solace goes after Idris because she pulls up his file and he looks exactly like he did 40 years ago. He's not aged, and she finds this suspicious because he wouldn't have been put under ice like she was. So she goes after him and they kind of rendezvous at this place called Luncro, the space station, and we see that Idris is now a part of a scavenger crew of the ship, the Vulture God. Now, quick rundown of the crew of the Vulture God. We have the captain of the Vulture God, who is Rollo, and he is very headstrong. He's very kind of family orientated. Like, they're not biologically family, but he sees the crew as his children, and he's this kind of father figure to a lot of them, and he's very cool. Then we have his second in command, basically Chris, who is the lawyer of the group. She's very cool. She becomes kind of like a semi-love interest for Idris, but we'll get to that in a bit because it's like this weird kind of brewing love triangle that I think is going to happen in the next book between Idris, Solace and Chris because of the thing. But anyway, so we have Chris the lawyer. Then we have Kit, a crab who is basically the finance director. He deals with all the kind of contracts and the finance deals and all the rewards and stuff of their kind of ventures in space. We have Medvig, who is a hive, which is a species of sentient robots that are also filled with like these weird bugs. I don't 100% understand what was going on there, but I think it's basically these bugs that have a hive mind that then took on robots that gain sentience. Anyway, he had really cool hands. Like, he has 3 hands and they split off and become cool drones. Then we have Ollie, who is this kind of human that was engineered, but some stuff went wrong, so they're missing some limbs. So they are kind of half human, half cyborg. And this is something that comes up later as a particular drive of division between Ollie and the Parthenon, and Solace specifically, because Ollie is like, if I was part of your race, you would not have let me live. You would have seen me as lesser, as inferior. And while Solace doesn't want to admit, like, yeah, we are kind of elitist in that way. Like, yeah, we probably would have just like not killed you. We probably would have just killed you because you're not like fully human. And Ollie's like, yeah, bet. So Ollie really hates the Parthenon, and there's this really big division between the two of them, and they have the most conflict out of the crew. And that, I thought that was very interesting. I thought that was really good, kind of picking up on that point, because I don't know, it just felt like very fitting. And a very interesting place to challenge the Parthenon as well, because we don't want the Parthenon to be like this idealistic thing. Anyway, so Ollie's part of the crew, and she has this really cool, so she's like half cyborg, she uses machines to get around, and she's kind of like melded with machine, but she also has this separate machine called the Scorpion, and it's like this really cool fighting machine, which comes in very handy a lot of the time. Then we have Barney, who's the engineer. He inspired this one because the only thing I can relate him to is Barney the dinosaur, because I don't know who Barney is. And that's kind of bad, because he dies, and when he died I was like, who's Barney? Who's Barney? I don't know anything about Barney, but that's Barney. So I think that's everyone, and obviously Idris is part of the crew as well, and Solace joins on. So we have Rollo, Chris, Ollie, Barney, Kit, Medvig. Yeah, that's the crew as it is at this point. But yeah, that's the crew of the Vulture God. So Solace joins them, and they are employed to go on a mission to find this missing ship called the Ammonus. But when they go into unspace and find it, it's been ripped apart by an architect. Seemingly it's been pulled apart, and it's like, are the architects back? And it's like this really important piece of scrap metal now that everyone wants a piece of, because everyone wants to control the information of, are the architects back? Some people really want everyone to think about the architects, because there's this group, like this cult, galactic cult called the Homogeneous, which is a play on the word of like everyone being one. And they basically tell people like, we can ward off the architects, because they have like this weird power to like scare architects away. Even if a planet is populated, they can like drive off architects, and they're like, hey, we'll like protect your planet if you join our cult and you let us be your bosses and you do everything we say and you join the cult. Very interesting. So they obviously want everyone to know the architects are back to kind of get people to join them, but then there's people that don't want people to know the architects back because they have their own reasons. They don't want people to know, they don't want people to panic, they don't want people to do things that then can stop them getting control. Very, like, loads of different aspects of this. So they bring it back to this space station called the Lungcrow, and they get into kind of a kerfuffle with the local authority there, who basically want control of the architect. So while they're fighting, and there's this weird bug creature as well, like this bug on the back of someone's neck, and they kind of become one. This parasite and the host become one, and we have a weird interaction with them first, where they're like, hey, do you have a ship that's been ripped up by the architect? Like, can I have it? Like, blah, blah, blah. And we don't know anything about them, and they kind of disappear. And then we're like, okay, that was weird. We should probably like follow up on that, but let's have a good party first. But then the local authorities and the cult, they all start fighting, and within the fighting, this pirates, which are part of like the weird bug people, they steal the Vulture God and the Ammonus, which is attached to it, and they jettison it off, and there's this big fight before they manage to steal the Vulture God, and Barney's killed. What a shame. don't know who you are, but Rip Barney. And that became a running joke for me, because every time they mentioned Barney, I was like, who is Barney? Like, I never really got a chance to understand who Barney was. Like, even in the comprehensive cheat sheet notes that I found on Reddit when I was looking for fan art, was like, Barney's an engineer. And I was like, okay, is that the only thing we know about Barney? And I'm wearing purple out of respect for Barney the dinosaur, because that is basically who he should have been. He's just Barney the dinosaur to me, because I don't know any other Barneys, you know. But yeah, Barney dies, and then more sadly, Medvig dies. And I was actually really sad that Medvig died, because I thought they were such an interesting kind of species, like the robots, but they have like hive mind bugs in them. So I was like really scared that was going to be the only thing we saw of them. And it was like only on chapter like 8 that they died, so really not far into the book at all. But thankfully we do meet another hive later on in the book, so, and I do prefer the hive that we meet later on. But yeah, Medvig initially was like really sad, because I was like, oh, that was such an interesting character. I would have really liked to know more about that. So Barney and Medvig die, the ship is stolen, and we're like, shit, what do we do now? We don't even have the proof that the architects are back, and yeah, we're in trouble with the local authority as well. And meanwhile, we also have another larger government organization who is after them. I can't remember the specific name, but it's Havea. Yeah, Havea is kind of a detective, but also a reporter, because no one can just be one thing in this universe. And he is on their case. He has been tasked with finding out what's going on with the Ammonus and the potential architect's return, which in turn leads him onto the Vulture God crew, and what they're up to and their involvement in this. So he's kind of on the trail, and we kind of see him doing some detective stuff in the background, but he doesn't become important until a bit later on. So the crew then, the crew kind of like, what do we do? The ship's been stolen. Do we just give up and like get a new ship? And they're like, oh, okay, no, we should probably go after it. So they kind of do some sleuthing. They find out that the bug creature was a space pirate. So it wasn't even like the two groups trying to control the information about the architect's return. It was just this random space pirate stole their group, and they're like, at least they were subjective. They didn't really care. But yeah, the ship got stolen by space pirates, and they know where they're going. They're going to a planet called Terra Forma, which is a really interesting planet. So quick side fan, I found the world building of Terra Forma so interesting, because basically it's this planet near all these kind of through lanes of like space travel, and they were gonna like colonize it. They were gonna terraform it and colonize it. But then they ran out of money, so they just left it. And then all the gangs moved in, and all the underworld moved in. So now it's kind of this hub of like space gangs and criminals, and the few law enforcement that are there are just like corrupt anyway. So I thought it was this really cool world. We don't spend too much time there. I wish we, I hope we go back there at some point, not just for it to be destroyed, but I hope we go back there, because I thought that was very cool. I just like the aspect of like a half terraformed world. I thought it was very cool world building. I really like that. But yeah, we find out that they're going there. So Solace uses her contacts within the Parthenon to requisition another ship called the Dark Joan. I nearly called it the Dark Zone then. The Dark Joan, which is this teardrop ship. And yeah, this causes a bit of tension as well, because they're like, how did you get this ship? Like, can you just steal anyone's ship? Like, why are you doing this? And Solace like, no, like, I just have connections, okay? So they use this ship, and it's kind of a really rubbish ship. Like, there's barely any room in it to move. There's just sleep pods and the control bay. Idris gets us to Terra Forma, and Chris gets us in contact with an old lawyer that she knew when she was doing training, and then that lawyer gets us in contact with a gang leader. Initially it was gonna like work our way up the chain, but then weirdly the gang leader's like, no, I want to talk to them. So we have a meeting with the gang leader, and we found out that he's the one that the Vulture God is coming to, but they think it's just the Ammonus. They didn't know that the Vulture God was like part of the thing they were getting. So they're like, you know what, you can have your shit back, but you're going to be in a leash contract, which is like a leash contract. I can't speak. A leash contract, which is basically modern day slavery. Because it's like a contract they can't get out of. They're just going to be working and working and working to get their shit back, but they never actually get it back. They're just indentured to these people. And the crew are like, okay, we've had you meeting with you. We're not going to do that. we're not going to do a leash contract with you. Thank you very much. So they kind of like are on the verge of giving up. And this is where Rollo steps up. He's the captain. But this is where Rollo really stands out. And he's like, no, we're going to fight for our ship back. We're going to fight them, and we're going to take our ship back. Even if it's illegal to do piracy, this is our ship. We're going to get it back. Solace, what guns do we have on this ship? And Solace is like, I kind of like this dude. We have these weapons. And And he does give everyone the opportunity to be like, hey, you don't have to like stay on the crew. Like, you can leave if you don't want to fight. It's totally fine. And we have a moment where Kit is kind of like, the crab person is like, oh, they're probably not going to want to fight because that's not what their species do. They're kind of more of like a we'll play tournaments thing. But no, Kit stays along and it was so cute. He was like, of course I'm going to be here. Yeah, they use the Dark Joan to get the Vulture God back. And this is where we get our really cool space battle between the two. Warships end up coming in at one point and it's this whole mess. And we get the Vulture God back, but at what cost? Because Rollo dies. And this is where I was beginning to be like, does anyone have plot armor? Like, this is starting to feel like a book where anyone can die, which I was not expecting going into this. I thought it would just be like straight up like one person from the crew will die just to give you stakes. But no, like now we've had 3 deaths from the crew. We're stretching it at 3. It's just 2 because who's Barney? But Rollo dies. And he doesn't even know that they got their shit back. He dies within the fight. And I thought that was really sad because he's like the father figure of all these characters. And without him, they all kind of fracture. And this is where Ollie and Solace specifically, they don't have anything in between them now. So they just argue and argue and argue the entire rest of the book about these kind of like ethics and stuff of the Parthenon. And would Ollie be accepted in a world run by Parthenon? It's very interesting. But we don't have time to get into that right now. So Rollo dies, and it's like this really clever thing by Tchaikovsky of like creating interesting dynamics between the crew because they don't have a leader anymore. So it's like, who's going to step up? And they do kind of rely a lot on Idris to kind of navigate them between Unspace. So they kind of put a bit of pressure on him to be the leader. But then we have Solace, who is also trying to like step up and be like, because they don't know, but she basically wants Idris to come back to the Parthenon, but she doesn't want to force him because she loves him. So she's kind of like trying to kind of weed him, get in his good book so he'll come with her. So she's kind of like stepping up a little bit, but then we have Ollie, who is also later becomes a more prevalent leader within the group, but they're also kind of like, why are we doing it this way? I think we should do this way. They're kind of like subtly coming up. Yeah, because it's really interesting split within the dynamics of the crew. And I love it. And then we get the Vulture God back and we're like, you know what? Everyone really wants the Amnesty for some reason. Even though like when they stole it, everyone on Lungcrow saw the wreck. So everyone now knows that the Architects are potentially back. So why were they still fighting so hard to keep it? So we go onto the Amnesty and we find these... what were they called? They were called the Originator Regalia, which are basically these weird rods. Now, these weird kind of rods, these ancient alien technologies that were found on planets, and basically the planets that they were found on had somehow like scared off Architects. Like, Architects don't come near a planet that has rods. However, when selfish planets, which is something we see in a backstory, try and take the rods to their own planet, the rods lose their effectivity and the Architects destroy them anyway. So you can't move the rods away from the planet that they originated from, but you can move them around the planet and they still work. But for somehow the homogenous people, the cool, found a way to transport them with them still working. So that kind of becomes a really big point, and that's what the Amnesty was. It was still transport them. But then it brings up the question of like, why was the ship destroyed by an Architect if an Architect can't go near the rods? So they go, okay, maybe we should get these rods, like we should go to someone, an academic that knows about these rods, and get them like checked to make sure they are actually real. So that's why we move on to Jericho, the next planet of this book, and it's this really cool kind of foresty planet. But the trees are actually monsters, just shaped as trees because it's convenient, but they can change at any time to kill you if they want. It's a very crazy planet, and there's some moments where Idris kind of interfaces with the wildlife because it's kind of on the same wavelength as the intermediaries. So it's very interesting stuff there. But they're looking for someone called Trine, who is very much like Medvig, who is the next hive person that we get, and they become part of the crew. So they replace Medvig basically, but they're off on this kind of isolated archaeological dig. So Ollie stays with the ship and Kit and that stay with the ship, and Solace and Idris take a land mobile over to them, even though Trine was like, hey, I'm here, but you should fly to me. But then everyone in the community is like, no, you can't fly. And we later learn that everyone in the community wants to kill Trine. So they kind of sell them out to the people from Lungcrow, the people that we were having issues with there, end up on the tail. And where we're out with Trine, and Trine's like, why didn't you bring your ship? I told you to come to me. They're gonna come kill me now. Everyone wants to kill me. And so they have to get in contact with Ollie, but by the time they get in contact with Ollie, Ollie's like, hey, there's this crew and they're coming to kill you. And then by the time they're like, oh, they're already here, and then there's this big shootout, and Ollie has to then pilot the ship for the first time. And they're like doing their job that they were already doing, but then they also have to do Idris's job of actually flying the ship, so they're really stressed, they're really on top of it, but they do a really good job, so well done, Ollie, you are amazing. There are points where Ollie annoyed me, but for the most part I really liked her. I really liked her Scorpion as well. There's often times when she's in battle and she's the Scorpion, it's like ripping people in half and stuff. It's very cool. But yeah, Ollie manages to save the day. They all manage to hop on the ship with Trine, and Trine is like, yeah, these rods are real. The ship was probably just a ploy by the Homogenous to make people think the architects are back, and it's not actually an architect that destroyed the ship, but the rods are real. The rods are real, and I'm going to hold on to them for academic purposes, because Trine doesn't care about the universe. They just want to be an academic, and they want to like research the architect. So throughout the novel, there's often points where like there's imminent danger, and Trine is just like, oh, this is a really good time for academics, which is very, very interesting. But yeah, just as we escape Jericho, Harbinger, the detective reporter guy, arrests us all and starts questioning us all, and we have that kind of common interrogation trope where we see all the different characters and their separate interviews, and they all react differently. So I really like this part, because we have Chris goes up first, and she is just like, you know what, I have nothing to hide, and she just says everything. She's like, yeah, this happened. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, that happened too. Yeah, and then this happened actually, and then we have Ollie, who is like, I'm not going to tell you anything, and she's like really reluctant to tell them, I'm not going to tell you anything, and then they just like play on her anger, and they make her really angry, and then she's like, well, no, actually, it happened this way, and they trick her into that way, and then for Idris, they like play on his PTSD of being like a war veteran, and he ends up like being like, oh, you're just trying to help stop the architects, okay, so basically this is what happened, and then we have Trine, who they're like, you're just an academic, you're not part of the crew, you're useless. And then we have Kit, who is by far the favourite one. And Kit, basically, because Kit is a crab, and they use kind of like translators to kind of talk to people, like they don't speak English, they like use computer images and a computer voice. And they're like, no English, I can't help, no English, I don't speak a language, communication barrier, I'm not telling you anything. And they're the only one that actually doesn't say anything. So big on you, Kit. I love Kit. Very cute, very cool. And Kit also, very interestingly, so they're crabs, and they're like crabs that like really love like jewels and stuff. They're like very financial orientated species. And they Kit has like these advertising spots on his own like body where he like he like strikes deals with the people within the story. Like they do it later on at the Parthenon. They get like advertising deals, and then they have like the adverts on their arms. I think that's so cute. I love them. The Kit is a real grifter, because we learn that in their culture, to show off your wealth, you like wear it. So them having advertising things is not them showing off their wealth, it's them like trying to get wealth, and they're like a real grifter, and I really love them. But yeah, we end up like stopping the interrogations because the the Broken Harvest people, the pirates, come back, and they start attacking us, and they're like, and Harvinger's like, we can't go into unspace with 2 ships grappled, so we're gonna let you go, but please come to this meeting place and like testify that the architects are back. Like we really need you to like tell the truth of what you've been through. So they break up and they go off. The Harbinger and the police force go off, and then the Vulture God people are like, yeah, sure, we'll meet them. And then they jump out, but then the Broken Harvest tracks them through unspace. It just has to jump in and out of unspace, and it's like this really draining process. But eventually we lose the Broken Harvest, but Idris is like really burned up, and he's not in good shape. So when everyone else wakes up, so the ship wakes up Chris and Kit as like a failsafe, like you guys need to be awake now, like your navigator's kind of like nearly dead. So they wake up, and luckily they've ended up, sorry, I'm just looking for the name. So they end up near Berlinghof, which is the kind of central hub of the universe. It's the main planet. It's this like 10 billion kind of people on it. Like it's really heavily populated, and we kind of learn that they don't have like an escape plan if the architects are back. It's kind of like not very subtly said that hey, we don't have any escape plan. Like, if the architects come back, we're all gonna die. So it's so subtle foreshadowing there. But yeah, they end up there luckily because it's a place where the architect had originally died. We learned that in that first battle, Idris killed the architect. So Idris was able to use it as kind of a landmark. Because he's like, hey, over there, out of unspace and over there, because I can see the dead architect there. I talked for 24 minutes. I meant to talk for 15. But yeah, they get out of unspace just in time. Idris is completely spent up, and we go and testify, but no one believes us. And they all basically just want the rods, and they're like, hey, well, if the rods work, then we should use them on our planet. And there's this kerfuffle with the broken harvest. They managed to come all the way back, but we fight them off and we get rid of them. Dealt with, whatever. Then we testify, but no one really believes us. They all just want the rods in their own power. But then suddenly the foreshadowing comes true. An architect shows up out of nowhere, and it's back, and it's heading towards a Bullinghoff, and it's going to kill everyone. And they have no escape plan, so they try and take the very like 0.0009% people that they can get off planet, and they start getting them off. But like they know a lot of people are going to die, so they're all fighting over the rods. And the Parthenon, who has the rods currently, because they're the ones that picked up the group, that they saved the group from the broken harvest people, and they're like, well, we have the rods, and we're not going to give you them. And at the minute, I was like, so you are psycho-military people. You just want everyone to die because you want to be the power. But then they were like, no, we're not going to give you the rods because we are the shield. And with the rods, we can be the sword. So we're going to go fight the architect and kill it. And we're going to save everyone. And I was like, okay, I see what you're doing there. But wouldn't it be more effective just to put the rods on the planet and just save the 10 billion people that are already down there and not risk the rods? But no, they don't listen to me. And they go fight the architect and they lose because whilst Idris and the other intermediaries, we see some other ones there, not important, they are like mind battling the architect to be like, hey, listen to us. But for some reason, the architect isn't listening to them this time, because we found out in the first battle, Idris basically was just like, hey, we're sentient, we're alive, why are you killing us? And the architect was like, yay, good point. And that's what kind of stopped it from attacking at that time. But it's not working this time. And we learned, because Idris is jolted awake by solace, the architect was actually busy shooting giant crystals into the ship, which then broke off into crystal warriors. So we found out the architects have evolved and they are more deadly than ever. And they steal the rods, and now we're definitely screwed because everyone is going to die, because now we don't even have the rods, and the ship of Parthians have been destroyed that they had there. So, and backup isn't coming anytime soon. So we're like, shit. So we all go back to the planet and we start trying to evacuate who we can. And then Idris is like really reluctant to leave. He's like, no, take me back up. I can do this. Like, give me another go. I need another go. Give me another go. But everyone's like trying to take him because he's like this really old, he's the most powerful one that they have because he was from the warrior, or all the new ones are kind of rubbish. So they're all fighting over him, but he's like, no. So eventually Harbinger comes in and saves our asses, and he's like, no, he's with me. I am part of the police. You cannot take him. And he takes Idris over to the Vulture gang, and they're like, I mean, I'm sure they'll take you up if you ask them, but like, this is as far as I'm going to help. So the Vulture crew come together in their final like found family moment, and they go up to the architect again, and Idris interfaces with it again. This time he's able to get its attention, but we learn that the architects aren't in full control. There's something guiding the architects. There's something making them work. They're basically indentured to a bigger, larger, scarier force, and they're just doing what they're told. And they don't want to kill everyone on the sentient planets, but they're being made to. So is that linked to the unspace creature? Is it something else? Like, I'm really struggling to kind of come up with theories about what is behind the architects. Like, most of the time I normally have theories, but this time I'm like, I don't really know what to guess, because it could literally be anything. Like, is this going to be like this whole thing of like a bigger universe and they're like tiny molecules within like a different universe? I don't know, like we view ants, like we're big sentient beings, and then ants are like their own thing, and then like we bully ants. Is it going to be that kind of thing? I don't know. I have no theories at all about what is going on. But yeah, the architects are basically just servants, forced servants, and they don't want to kill him. But then he's like, okay, I'm going to buy you time. The architect leaves for now. Idris goes back and goes like, I just saved like 10 billion people. And they're like, yeah, the war is over. The architects are not coming back. And he's like, whoa. I didn't say I stopped the architects for altogether. They are coming back. They are gonna kill us all. Like, we need to start strategizing against, like, defeating the architects and whatever is behind them. And they're like, no, you dealt with it, buddy. We're all fine. We're fine. So it's like this really ignorance. They're all really ignorant. And they don't believe him. The Parthenon does, but no one else does, which is kind of the hard thing. So yeah, we end the book with the Parthenon kind of breaking a contract, or dealing a contract with the vulture god to bring that crew on, and Solace kind of talks to her mother, her boss, not her actual mother, that's just what they call their boss's mother. They strike a deal to be the liaison with the vulture god so they can still be with the gang. Trine decides to stay with us because it's of more academic value to stay with us because we're going to be dealing with the architects more than anyone else. And that's where the book ends. And I think there's going to be a lot of devastation in the next books. I think some planets are going to be destroyed. And yeah, that's all I can guess. I really hope no more of our crew die. I feel like Kit is probably going to die. Ollie is probably going to die. I feel like, for some reason, I feel like everyone on the crew is going to die at some point. Like, we're going to slowly start losing people throughout the series and we're going to end up with like 2 survivors at the end. But I think, yeah, Kit, Chris and Ollie are definitely like up to be murdered. I would like to see Chris survive, but I feel like being the like this weird kind of love triangle building between her and Idris, but also Idris and Solace, I feel like one of them has to die. So yeah, that's kind of sad. But I think, yeah, I feel like the most likely to die is probably Kit, to be honest, because he's just a little crab boy and they're probably just going to step on him or something. It's going to be really sad. But yeah, that is Shards of Earth. Very interesting. I really like this one. It was really good. 5 stars. Absolutely enthralled by it. I've been talking for 30 minutes. I meant to talk for 15. Sorry about that. But yeah, let's get on to the next book, which I believe is called The Eyes of the Void. So we're probably going to be delving more into that unspace creature that kind of drives people crazy, and we're probably going to be confronting that. Yeah, let's get on to book 2, Eyes of the Void. Hopefully it'll be a 5-star read just like this one. Let's go. Okay, so I'm back and I've now read book 2, Eyes of the Void. And now jumping straight into this one, I was a little bit let down by this one. Not like in a bad way, like I still enjoyed this book. This was still a 4-star read for me. But the place it dropped that star for me was it just kind of felt a bit dull in comparison to the previous one. Like, they were, don't get me wrong, there were huge set pieces in this book and there were some really epic moments. But I just felt kind of bored. At times, and I got a little bit lost in the middle when they were doing all their sciencey, researchy stuff, which is good for world building and exploring this throughout the architects, but it kind of just got a bit benign, it got a bit boring, and yeah, it kind of lost a star there because I got a bit bored and I felt like the characters in the first book were so energetic and lively, and we had this kind of atmosphere of like no one's safe, anyone could die, this is like a really deadly world that we're in, or universe that we're in because it's interstellar. And then in this book we don't really have that same vibe. Like, as of my memory now, it has been a month since I read this, I'm now filming this, but I don't think, like, no one important actually died in this book, whereas in the previous book we had whoever the fuck Barney was, we had the captain, Rollo, we had that other guy, the Medvic, and yeah, like, so 3 big names for that crew, and like established members like Rollo were dying just left, right and centre, like, and it felt like consequential. Like, of course, you've just gone to challenge these people, you're going to face consequences, you're not going to escape scot-free. This isn't kind of like a fantasy tale. Whereas in this one, it kind of did feel like that, because we had some huge battles in this one and everyone got out like pretty much unscathed, and it was like, okay, like, Idris lost an arm again at some point towards the end, but besides that, there were no like major casualties. And I know it's a weird thing to complain that no one died, but I'm very much a person that I do think character deaths can add stakes, and especially if you've already established that this is a world where multiple characters can die in the first book, it kind of feels a bit weird to not have the similar stakes in this one. Like, not even like a major injury, besides Idris's arm, but he's used to it by now. But yeah, anyway, jumping into what actually happens in this book, we start off in kind of a universe where the architects are back in force, and that threat is back. They are destroying worlds left, right and centre, and they are back to business. And this period of peace that they'd previously been having, where they would now fighting amongst themselves is now over. Well, they're still fighting amongst themselves, but now the architects are also killing them all. And we follow on directly from our Vulture God crew, and they are off on a mission to get kind of this data packet from this person. But Havanger, I can't remember how you say his name, Havanger, is also there on like policey business, and he ends up with the data packet in the end. But there's like a bunch of side character deaths of like these gang members or whatever. That was kind of like a weird start, but it was something. And we also see then Idris, supposedly he is still at the Parthenon, and he is a part of the new int training program, but he's very kind of insistent that the new ints have to be volunteers because it doesn't work properly if they're not volunteers. If like someone's forced into it, they're going to end up, their mind's going to get melted and they're not going to be fully with it. They have to be willingly ints, not just for like the moral side of like, I don't want to force people into this, but also because he volunteered and he is an example of a really powerful int. So by that logic, you have to volunteer, and then that will probably make you better, like it did with Idris. And then, so that's kind of like the setup and where we are in the beginning of this novel. So then the kind of push into the action of this book is Trine, my like semi-favorite character from the previous book that came into the second half. They're like another Hive member. I really loved them. I thought they were so like endearing and cute, and yeah, they were just really fun. And they come back and they're like, hey guys, because they're like really research orientated, they're like a scholar, and they come back to the group and they're like, hey guys, there's an architect above a planet, a hegemonic planet, so the cool people, and it's not attacking them, it's just sat in orbit. And this is the first time this has ever happened where an architect is in the presence of a planet and it isn't doing anything. And we kind of believe this is because on this hegemonic planet they have an originator city, well, the ruins of a city that they built their cities into. And the architect seems to be sending some of those crystal monsters from the end of the first book to dismantle that city and break it apart. So we should go over and study what about the city is making it stop, and also we can get an up close look at the architect as well. And now the hegemonic government has offered a truce with the Parthenon in order to do a research study. There are some kind of strict guidelines about weapons and stuff, but we can go and study it. So we should go and find out what we can find out and see if there's a weapon or something that we can use against the architects to get rid of them once and for all, now that we can actually study its weaknesses. And everyone's kind of a bit skeptical, Idris specifically, because he doesn't really want to leave the int training in the hands of the Parthenon, because they are very much like a warrior cult. So he's scared that they literally, despite him saying don't make people do it, they're probably going to make people do it. And the Vulture God crew is kind of like, oh, we kind of just escaped the architects in the previous books and we barely scraped by then. Should we really be putting ourselves in that position? But ultimately they end up deciding to go. And that is where the action of this book starts. So when we do get to this planet, I forgot the name of the planet, but we do get to the planet and we spend some time there. We get a bit of world building about looking around these originator ruins and how the new society of hegemonic has kind of built into them. And it's very good world building. Adrian Tchaikovsky is really good at kind of building immersive worlds that you really feel are lived in. Like, they're just so vivid and so cool. So props to him. He's a really good world builder. But eventually everything falls to shit because these random ships pop out of nowhere in the sky and they start attacking the architect, and they're using some kind of weapon to do so, some kind of unspaced weapon, and it actually works. Now, these people are called the Locust, and they're called Locust because previously they had a planet and the architects had destroyed it, so they'd had to flee like locusts and just live aboard ships, and that's how their existence has been, very much similar to Ash the Harbinger from the previous book. And yeah, now they have had enough and they are fighting back, and they have figured out if they kind of formulate their ships in a certain position, they kind of have this weapon that they can then shoot at the architect, and it does some real damage to the architect, so much that the architect calls in its buddies and is like, hey, I need back up here, like I've just had a giant hole punched out the side of me by this random weapon that no one's seen before. And the Locusts do eventually get kind of wiped out. They kind of get killed when the other architects comes, that it's like this sign that, okay, so there is a weapon that we can use against the architects. They're not completely invincible. And that is like really good news. But yeah, everything goes to shit. The architects start ripping up the planet now. They're just going for it. The Vulture God crew scrape by them and manage to escape, but they leave Idris behind by accident because he's kind of been kidnapped and no one knows where he is. They think he might be dead, and they even have like this funeral thing that they did with Rollo in the previous book for him, because they just give up hope that he's alive. But then there's kind of inkling that maybe the hegemonic people took him off before that he got to the Vulture Guard, so then they kind of like beefing with the hegemonic people, who then call the truce, and all hell breaks out loose in that end. And then jumping back to Idris, who is actually still on the planet and watches it kind of crumble until he's taken away by these scientists. Now these scientists take him to a really volatile planet called Hell. Very fitting, because this planet is really close to its star, so it's kind of burnt and scorched and it's really dangerous. There's loads of radiation, you can't leave the facility. But the reason they're on there is because on this planet is an originator city, an originator facility, I should say, that hasn't been taken about. So everything else that we've seen from the originators has been destroyed by them or by architects. We're not quite sure, but nothing has been left by these originators intact, so we can never really figure out how their technology work. But on this planet they have found a facility that is still in working order, and there's kind of this machine that you can be hooked up to and search on space more safely and precisely, and it's like this huge deal, and they are trying to figure out how to work it, how to make it work, and they really need an int, specifically Idris, because he is infamously one of the most powerful ints. He's just really good at what he does, despite him not really wanting to be good at what he does. But Idris does kind of get consumed in this research, and he kind of sees like, okay, you kidnapped me, but this is actually kind of important because we could actually figure out who's behind the architects here. We end up doing all these stuff. The Vulture Guard are fighting with the hegemonic cult, and they end up above this hell planet and they're fighting it out, and they learn that Idris is on the planet. They think like he's being held there, so they're trying to launch a mission to go get him, but Idris is actually just on the base like, hook me up, let's go into unspace and figure out what's going on. Ash the Harbinger is there, and he is with the scientists, and they're basically this kind of group of different there was like some objectors to the hegemonic cult that they kind of like left it, so there was like a mixture of different hegemonic cult people and just normal people, and then we obviously got Idris and Ash, and yeah, basically they end up getting the machine to work, and Idris is using it. It takes two people to use it, and Idris is in it, and he finds not the architect's boss, but what seems to be their nursery. He finds where their children are, which poses kind of this moral issue, because it's like, okay, so now we know where the architects are coming from, and we have Idris, who's kind of like, we should leave them alone. They're like being forced to kill us anyway. It's not their fault, it's whoever's behind it. But then on the other hand, we have Ash, who's like, let's go in, kill all their children, and just stop them from ever having more architects and stuff like that. So Ash is very like, let's murder these children, and it just is like, oh, maybe we should keep looking for the main boss, but it's too late because the war is happening and the planet's becoming more unstable and the facility is crumbling. So they managed to get Idris off, and that is basically the sum up of this book. We basically learn more about the architects and where their children are coming from. We see some action with actually being able to attack the architects, but as I said in earlier, there's not as much happening. Like, it didn't feel like as much happened in this one compared to the first one, where we were kind of jumping around the galaxy, chasing after our ship, finding out that the architects are back, fighting the architects. It felt like so much was happening in the first book, jumping around and back and forth, whereas in this one it kind of like, the first, they're on a planet where the architects not attacking and they're researching. Then there's drama with the hegemonic cult, and we end up on, Idris ends up on Hell doing research. We get Idris back. Like, three main specific points in this book. So it didn't really feel as kind of like expansive as the first book, but that's not a major complaint, because we are into the second book in the series now, so we do need some world building and some kind of like set up for the next book. So that's not a complaint, it's just how I felt at the time, and it did kind of get a bit confusing, a bit boring at times. But yeah, we leave this book with that moral quandary of like, we now have the information of where we could really do some damage to the architects. Like, we could literally just go wipe them out if we wanted to, but we're kind of like, that seems morally wrong, especially since they're no better than us. They're like being forced into this by something. So Idris still wants to find out what's behind it, but we still aren't much closer to that. And I did actually meet Adrian Tchaikovsky the other month, and I got all these books signed, which I should show you. He drew a little picture in all the books. I had about 12 books, and he drew a different picture in all of them. So this is the Eyes of the Void one. and he drew a little architect look, doing a bit of like mangling, which is very cute. But I met Adrian Tchaikovsky, here's me and him, a very awkward looking selfie. But I said to him that my theory was that it's whatever that kind of presence in unspace is, which I think is the most obvious kind of assumption that I can make. So I've not come up with anything specific there, but I believe that there is something in unspace that is kind of messing with everyone's mind, and I'm not quite sure if it's like a fourth dimensional being where it's like not actually physical, it's more kind of a presence, or whether it is a presence. But it could also just be like another really advanced civilization that has harnessed unspace. Like they could just be like some other humans or humanoids just on a planet somewhere controlling everything, like with computers or something. It could literally be anything. But I don't know, I think I'm more inclined to it being kind of like this fourth dimensional interstellar being that is within unspace, or maybe it is unspace, and it's manipulating things with kind of a more kind of mind force rather than it being programmed or anything. I don't know. But basically I said to him, I think that creature that gives everyone the heebie-jeebies in unspace is actually a being, and it is actually doing those things, and it's not kind of this made-up superstition that the travelers have. It's something that is actually interacting with them, and it is controlling the architects. And he went, that's a very interesting theory, but I won't say anything. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, that's my theory. So going into the next book, which is the last book in the trilogy, I believe that we will get answers, obviously, and hopefully we can figure out a solution where we don't have to kill a bunch of children. Is that too much to ask? I actually do feel quite bad for the architects. Like, yes, they're these mass murdering, planet destroying beings, but the fact that we've learned that they're kind of forced into it, like they have no control, and like, I don't know, I just feel really bad for them. And I don't want us to get rid of all their children, because that feels a bit too personal, even though they've killed all our children, I guess. But anyway, 4 out of 5 stars. Let's get into the third book, which is Lords of Uncreation. I think this one has an architect in it as well. I think he did it based on what books. Yeah, this one has an architect in it as well. So the Shards of Earth has an architect. I think the Dogs of War has like a really cool dog drawing, which I might show you in the next clip for this book. But it's like a really cute dog drawing. You know what? I'll show you now. One sec. Okay, brief interlude where I show you all the signatures and the drawings he did, because now I'm just like, I may as well just show them all. So briefly, you can skip past this bit if you're not interested, but we have a bear head, and he drew a little kind of little dog. I mean, it's probably supposed to be a bear, but it looks like one of those like Great Danes with like the floppy cheeks over their mouth. How cute is that? And then we have Alien Clay, where he drew some kind of alien. I've not read any of these books, so I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be, but it looks like a little crab. It looks like a little crab. Then we have Doors of Eden, and this one he drew, I think, he drew like a stingray kind of creature there. Then we have Dogs of War, which I'm gonna wait, actually, you'll have to wait for that one. Then we have Cage of Souls, which he drew, I think, a forest in this one. Little forest with some little moors. Then we have Children of Time, where he drew a little spider. Then we have Children of Ruin, where he drew a kind of little octopus thing that comes across on camera. And then we have Children of Memory, which has a little birdie in it. A little angry birdie. And then Dogs of War. The final one is the cute little boy. The cute little doggy boy. Isn't he cute? He looks like Scooby-Doo. He's so cute. He's so cute. His little collar. Yeah, there are all the signatures. So, okay, so let's get into... I've lost the book now. It's here. Okay, now let's get into Lords of Uncreation. I'll see you when I read it. Bye! Okay, so I have now read the third and final book, Lords of Uncreation. And this book, I have conflicting feelings about. So, obviously with the first book, I was raving about it. I loved it. And I think you may have picked up on my declining interest in the second book. And that only gets worse in this third book, because I think out of 5 stars, this would be a 3. And going from a 5-star first book to a 3-book second book, you're going to have to hear my thoughts, because there's like two main reasons why that has happened. But a short summary of what happened in this book is basically we see the team, they're all split up doing their own different things, trying to uncover how we can defeat this mysterious entity that we've found behind the architects. We have Ollie and Kit together, and they're kind of bouncing around with the Vulture Guard. They were my favourite pairing. They didn't really do much for the majority of the book. They were just kind of bouncing around trying to figure out what was going on, and they uncover like the Parthenon coop, I can never say that word, and like the hidden Parthenon ships and stuff, which was a very cool scene. They have like a dog squid thing. It's a squid in a tank that has the ability of like tracking dogs, where it can bounce in and out of unspace like an int. Sorry, I forgot the word then, it's been a minute. But they're basically ints, but the animal versions of them, so there's not as much control over them. And they have a whole scene where they're bouncing in and out of Uncreation, and Ollie's like going mental, and she's like, what the hell are we gonna do? And Kit's like, oh. I love that scene so much. That was so fun. And eventually they uncover the Parthenon and start getting attacked and stuff. But we have those two. We have Idris and Solace. They're trying to still figure out how to try and convince Ash not to just go and slaughter all the architects, and to actually go for the people behind the architects that we've discovered after the previous book. The previous book ends with us shooting a big observation deck kind of off of a planet, and that is called the Eye in this book, and that is very much a pivotal point of getting to the things behind the architects. I don't know how well I'm describing this, but yeah, essentially the whole team is split up. They're all doing different things. We come together, we battle the people behind the architects, and they use the architects against us. So we got a bit of the architects fight, and then we're fighting the people behind the things, and we find out that there's Lords of Uncreation behind Unspace, and they are the creators of the universe. That is the brief summary of what happened in this book. We basically split up, use the Eye, find the people behind the architect, fight the architects a little bit until we can turn the architects against the lords, and then we battle the lords and we win. Essentially that's it. So let's dive into my main thoughts. So obviously there I mentioned the Ollie stuff. Ollie, by far my favourite character in this trilogy. By the end of it, I loved it. I did really love Idris in the previous books, but I didn't really care about him in this book. So Ollie has cemented herself as my favourite character, as long as Kittering. They've worked their way up there. I loved Kittering as well. But yeah, I mentioned there's two main reasons why this book didn't hit for me, and the first reason is the unanswered questions, or the lack of fulfillment in the questions that were answered. So a large majority of this trilogy was the question of what is behind the architects, why the architects are doing what they're doing, and ultimately we find out it's because they're being told to by these creators of the universe who don't like sentient life. So they created the universe exactly how they wanted it, and then sentient life started coming up, and the more thoughts that happened, the more irritated they got, and they would send the architects to go wipe out all the people that were thinking that they didn't like. And their main goal is to kind of wipe life off of the universe and have it back to the way they wanted it. And I feel like that's a very basic motivation. It's very much just like they don't like life, they want to get rid of it all. There's no like nuance there. And I feel like that's fine. I did really like the scope that was attempted. Well, not attempted, but succeeded in the series. I liked the kind of effort it felt like for us as a reader, as well as the characters, kind of unveil what was behind the architect and what was causing all these things. And it really did feel like we were trying to battle a god. But in the end, it happened so quickly. Like, we literally got to them at like this point, and it just felt very rushed, and we didn't really get much time with them to explore why they created the universe / wanted it back to the way it was, why they don't like life. It was kind of just like, oh, they find us annoying, so they want to get rid of us, which is funny, and this trilogy does have humour, but it just felt like it wasn't strong enough. I don't know how to explain my disappointment in that, but I found that very disappointing, was the kind of simple motivation of our main villains and the lack of time we actually spend with them. I feel like the architects were more threatening. And I go into something I did like. I really like that we turn the architects against the Lords of Uncreation, even after Ash kind of forces Idris to go after the architects' families. Like, we find out that the architects are made within this kind of web-like structure, and we start kind of cutting the strands of the web and killing off the architects and their children. But they still fight back against their masters when we need them the most, which I really appreciated. And I liked the development of the architects, of like going from like this really threatening entity we know nothing about, and then we learn a bit more in the second book, and that they're actually victims, the same as everyone else in this universe, and eventually they fight back. And I thought that was a really good kind of arc for those architects. I wish perhaps we could have got one specific architect that we really knew, but it was more kind of like a broad species kind of thing. We only saw them as architects. We never saw like, oh, there's Phil the architect, which probably would have been kind of removed some of the mystery behind them. But I don't know, I would have liked maybe perhaps a singular architect that we learned a bit more about. But yeah, Ash forced us into it because Ash just wanted revenge, because we learned that Ash was part of this species that had a higher intellect, a higher connection to unspace, and they'd like communicate through it, and they were all like a hive mind. And the Lords of Uncreation really didn't like Ash's species, and they sent architects, like an architect after every single member of Ash's species, like architects for one of his species. They'd completely wipe them out because they were such a threat, because they had such a high communication through unspace, and it caused a lot of thought annoyance for the Lords of Uncreation. How like coherent am I in this video? So I thought that was really sad for Ash and learning about Ash's backstory, and I really loved learning more about Ash. But like the pure vengeance that they had made sense, but then I was like, no, can we please like not kill the architects? Please, can we like leave them be and go for the people that are controlling them? Like, I couldn't connect with Ash's motivation, but that's because I'm not a victim like Ash was. Like I'm not a victim of being hunted down by these massive moon-like creatures. So I understand why Ash was the way they were, but I was like, please, can we just like listen to Idris and go for the Lords of Uncreation instead? What else happened in this book? I have a little post-it note here. So I mentioned there was a big coup with the Parthenon. So they kind of have the humans start. I think it was the humans, and this is where I'm vague because I kind of wasn't that interested, so I didn't kind of clock as much of it. But there was some kind of force that joined the Parthenon and tried to like purify it, so that they were warrior women again, and all the people that had interacted with people that weren't Partheni were kind of all shoved into hangars, and we were trying to like subtly get rid of them because the Parthenon don't want to waste resources. They don't want to outright kill like Solace and all that, so they kind of shoved them to the side and then into these groups, and then we're like, oh, it'd be a shame if these ships full of people we don't like get blown up. I thought that was very interesting, but it was boring. So the grand idea of it I found cool, but the majority of it I just wasn't really that interested in. There was a cool scene where they're all being split up and taken to different places, and Trine, bless them, was like split apart, and they were like, you're just going to be used as a data bank, like you were meant to be. Oh, and we learned that Trine's planet, the Hivers, their planet fell into a black hole, so there was nowhere for Trine to go back to, and they could feel like there was no one in the hive mind anymore, and it was so sad. And I was like, oh my god. And I like the idea that it just fell into a black hole. It's just something that happens within the universe. It wasn't like forced or anything. It's just a sad like natural disaster based in the universe. I thought it was quite cool. It's like a hurricane here. They have a planet falling into a black hole. But that was really sad, and seeing Trine taken apart and no one was being able to stand up for them, it was very sad. I was like, Trine, I really do like you. What else do we have? Idris ends, so the book ends, I'm like jumping around with my thoughts here. The book ends very happily, everyone kind of gets their happy ever after, and then we find out that Idris is still in like a coma state, because his mind is now where the Lords of Uncreation were. We defeat the Lords of Uncreation. I'm just calling them that because that's what the book's called. And he is now kind of a cosmic being, and we see the other ints towards the end are like, oh, I'm just gonna go check on something, and then they go within the like liminal space in unspace, and like Idris, or like a force that is implied to be Idris, is there, and I'm like, okay, what's Idris up to? Is he taking the place of these Lords of Uncreation? What else do we have? Lacking answers, I kind of said that. We kind of also have a lacking resolution with the found family. Like, they never really have too much of a time together. Like, we get told that they come and visit Idris, but they don't do it together. So sometimes they'll be together, like Ollie and Kit, but like Chris never really unites with them. We never have really, like, I know it's cheesy, but could we just have like a diner scene where they are all sat around a table talking about what they've been through? Like, that would have made me. Could we all, like, could they all have just gone back to the Vulture Squad? Oh, that reminds me, something I didn't even write in my notes. Ollie's happy ending is that she ends up with like a whole kind of space pirate empire that she kind of inherits, and she's not part of any like system or society because no one really wants them, but they're like protecting them because it kind of relates to their system, but they're not. So they're kind of like in this grey area where they can get away with stuff, and I think that's perfect for Ollie. She deserves that kind of ending. She's the best space pirate. I found it sad that the Vulture God ended up in like a museum as well. I was like, oh, can we not have like upgraded it or like had a Vulture God 2.0? But yeah, that's most of my thoughts. How long have I been splurging? About 11 minutes that I've talked, so I think that's enough for this book. I don't really have too many more thoughts. Like I said, it was kind of the letdown. I enjoyed what I did get, and I liked that we got some of those answered, and then we saw what was actually behind Uncreation. We didn't quite learn what the feeling was that people get when they're in Unspace, when they feel like someone's watching them. That's kind of an unanswered question as well, because we kind of turned that creature against the Lords of Uncreation as well, and that's how we defeat them. Which I thought was cool, but again, we don't really learn what that entity was, which we don't necessarily need it to. I'm not saying that everything needs to be answered in a story. It's so fine. It's okay to have unanswered questions and mysteries within a series. But I don't know, I just kind of wanted to know. Okay, I'm just being a little stickler. I'm being hypocritical. I wanted to know, but I totally understand that we don't need to know everything. But I'm just being a bitch because I wanted to know. But yeah, overall, I think as a trilogy, I would rate it highly. I would say overall 4 stars if we're counting all 3 books together. I definitely think it's worth checking out, and definitely worth recommending. It'd be something I definitely recommend. But we're getting into the conclusion thoughts now. So that was all my thoughts on Lords of Uncreation. Overall, I kind of talked myself maybe into 3.5 stars, 4 stars, okay? No, I'm going to go 3.5 because I did like the second book better, and I want there to be like a clear view of that. But yeah, let's get into the final thoughts. Okay, so I've been talking for a very long time. I would not be surprised if this video is now an hour long. But yeah, I have finally read the Shards of Earth trilogy. It's such a relief to have this uploaded and my thoughts be out there, because I've been filming this like for months. Like, I don't know when I actually started the first and second parts of this video. I'll leave like timestamps in each section of like when I filmed it, because that might be a funny little hint for people that have watched all the way to this point. But it took me a long time, a very long time, to get to the end of this, and I'm very happy. It feels so nice to have it done. But anyway, overall thoughts, I would rank them in the order they come in. So 5 stars for Shards of Earth, this is my favourite. 4 stars for Ice of the Void. Did start to lose me when the characters started to split up, because I really did like the found family feeling of the first book, and seeing these characters together and interacting, because there were kind of tensions between them, which made it even more interesting, especially with kind of like the cultural differences between them as well, because you've got Ollie, who is kind of like this distorted human with a lot of disfigurements, and then you've got Solace, who is this kind of like purebred human warrior, and we kind of had the conflict between those two and how their cultures see each other. So it was very interesting. And then we started to split up in this one, but it was mostly still together. And then this one, which I would rate 3.5 stars, and the last of the 3, kind of took it all apart, and they were all kind of separated, and I didn't really like it. But overall, a brilliant trilogy. Would definitely recommend them to people wanting to read sci-fi. I feel like they're very Becky Chambers. They're very Xinju Liu. They felt like they had the scale. Well, not on the same level as Three Body Problem, but they had a similar kind of like massive scale to them, like what created the universe and the universe ended and all these things. Not quite at his level, but like getting there. Becky Chambers, like I said, and I think they're the 2 main people I would compare them to. But yeah, I really enjoyed this video. I really hope you enjoyed it too. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. I put a lot of effort to getting this done. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Leave a little alien emoji or a little rocket ship, or both, to let me know you got to this point. I don't think anyone will. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I don't know what it will be just yet. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. Goodbye.